Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. On today's pod, we are talking about value running back and wide receiver picks.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin', Fantasy Champions? I don't know why I just sounded so sad to be recording a podcast today. Did that sound like sad?
Funny. It did kind of sound sad.
It sounded like I was grieving something.
You've been the complete opposite before we record the show, so.
Yeah. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always.
What's up?
We got some things to get into in this podcast. We are going to talk about, with COVID and the new rules, players have been opting out. So we're going to discuss one particular opt-out that shook up the fantasy football universe on, I can't remember what day it was. Wednesday? Was it Wednesday? So we'll do that, and then we'll get right into our running back value picks. Before we do that, check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, @TheFFChamps. Follow me, @MorganColby_FF, and you can follow Rick, @RickyLemon_FF. Almost forgot your handle. Instagram, @TheFantasyChampions. You can like us there, too. And you can also like us at Facebook.com/TheFantasyChampions. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platform, leave a review. Leave what you think about the podcast in the bottom or wherever you're listening to. Just leave a review. Share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and like and leave a comment. And we also have the draft guide. Tell them about the draft guide, Rick.
Well, guys, we've been advertising the draft guide for a while, and we're going to keep doing it. The draft guide, it's only $25. It's not that bad.
Keep talking about what you can buy with $25. We should just do like a whole marketing campaign in August, just solely based on what you can buy instead of the draft guide.
I'm not sure.
Or what you can forsake buying and buy the draft guide.
Right. I know for you, that's like half a Starbucks trip.
Or half a Chipotle trip.
Or half Chipotle trip. Half anything.
Because I could eat 2 Chipotles.
2 is kind. I think you could eat 3 or 4. Anyway, the guide is live, guys. We got full rankings. We got breakouts, busts, player draft values, player breakdowns, and so much more. If you guys order now, you will be entered in a chance to be in our listener league as well. Make sure you tell your friends about it.
Let's get right into the one piece of opt-out news we're going to do. If there are any major players, we'll obviously talk about them on Tuesday.
We obviously forgot about Devin Funchess.
Oh, yeah. We'll talk about Funchess on Tuesday. Funchess can take a leap. Devontae Adams locked to be 240 targets. The one that we wanted to talk about was Damian Williams choosing to opt out of the 2020 not fantasy football season, the 2020 NFL season. I don't really know why. I never looked it up. I don't think anybody really cared why Damian Williams opted out. They just were happy that he opted out because CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, gets that opportunity. Let's go, dude.
I mean, we've both been high on Clyde all year. We were kind of backtracking a little bit because of like him not getting training camp reps and preseason reps and stuff because of coronavirus for all rookies. So that they might lean towards the veteran a little bit more.
I just want to draft rookies.
The veteran gone, Clyde is the guy there, and there is no competition for him. And he's about to get an insane amount of work in the best offense in football.
I think, it's funny seeing the two different realms on the fantasy football Twitter universe saying, you still have the CEH haters. It's so funny. I was thinking about that today. I'm like, the haters of CEH next year, after he is like, he finishes as like a top 8 back, they're all going to just line up to draft him.
Probably.
And I'm like, people are just so stupid. I understand your opinion, but don't like a running back on the best offense in football that was drafted in the first round. You have to respect that.
Yeah.
So what was interesting about this is that the reason why I was personally backtracking, I think I retweeted myself from a take that I tweeted 3 days earlier that I was backtracking on CEH, and now that's completely erased from history.
Right.
But the reason I was nervous is because, a lot of I've been tempted to take some rookie wide receivers in the later rounds this year, Justin Jefferson, Denzel Mims, some guys that could actually get some opportunity year one, maybe be the Terry McLaurin. And it's just hard to do this particular year because of COVID. It's going to take players a lot, rookie, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, quarterbacks, whatever it may be, a little bit longer to acclimate to the pro game because they don't have any practice preseason games to get used to it. They're just getting thrown right into the water. So I was nervous about CEH earning opportunity. Damian Williams is when it comes to earning his role, he's a monster at it, and he's very, very good at earning a spot on a roster. So I thought Damian Williams might have an opportunity to kind of carve out a role in that team that would take reps away from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I still thought he was going to finish with 170 to 190 fantasy points, but I was starting to think he's not that exciting to me because of those variables, not just that, but it's also I don't know. All of the running backs are drafted in situations, all of the rookie running backs are essentially drafted into situations this year with a guy that is in front of them. So I thought Clyde was going to get that role, but I was just getting more and more nervous because if he didn't get it, then you would be out a third round pick essentially. Does the risk equal the reward at that point? Well, now Damian Williams opts out. Clyde becomes a first round pick automatically, which is ridiculous to me. I'm hoping that people in our league don't really draft Clyde in the first round, but
he'll probably go in the first round.
Yeah.
In most leagues.
But anyway, so the big thing that I do want to, I'm excited. You're excited. Let's just really for a second, name the running backs that you rank ahead of Clyde right now.
So I've been going back and forth with this, looking at the list. I think we both have some guys. I think McCaffrey, Barkley should be ahead of him. I think for me, Zeke and Kamara are ahead of him. I'd probably put Dalvin Cook ahead of him.
Okay.
But then
the kicker.
He might be number 6. In PPR leagues, I think
a lot of people are ranking him ahead of Derrick Henry.
I think I have him ahead of Henry too.
So
it's close though.
I'll do this. I'm gonna say CMC Barkley, CMC Barkley, Zeke, Cook, Kamara, Henry, and then Clyde.
It's hard.
I'm having a hard time too because I still like Miles Sanders.
Yeah.
So I'm like, dude,
I'm a Nick Chubb
Miles Sanders or Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's very close.
I'm probably taking Clyde.
So here's
but it's close.
Here's what I was thinking about today because with all the excitement surrounding Clyde Edwards-Helaire and the stupid Twitter explosion of people who actually really, really like this guy. I love Clyde. We both love Clyde from the beginning, but I like to temper excitement when it comes to certain players. Sure. So I was looking at some of the statistics about, Chiefs running backs in the past and, or in particular, Andy Reid running backs in the past. And I just wanted to go over the sample size of the last 2 years with Patrick Mahomes to see what kind of opportunity the starting running back got in the passing game, because this is a big argument with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Everyone's talking about how he's going to get an absurd amount of pass catching work and that he might not be big enough to reach the Kareem Hunt 270, rushes. He might only be able to reach 240 in his rush totals, but he's going to get targeted so much in that offense, right? That he's just going to garner 300 touches that way and he's going to get 60 catches. I don't think that Patrick Mahomes has never had a running back catch more than, I want to say 40 passes in a season in the 2 years that he started for the Chiefs. Kareem Hunt was pacing out when he left that team. He was pacing out at about 38 catches. Damian Williams, I think he was pacing at 34 catches. So that kind of leaves me a little bit concerned because they have, and this is what I was thinking about, because everyone, like I said, everyone's talking about how Clyde's going to get the target share, right? Like, you would think that too, right?
Yeah.
Clyde's going to get the target share. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Mecole Hardman. You still got Sammy Watkins there, right? Even though we think Sammy Watkins is going to be a garbage can. I mean, I don't know. I haven't decided on Sammy Watkins yet. But you got a lot of targets to feed there.
Sure.
And I think that there's opportunity in the passing game for Clyde. I think he'll probably get 60 targets and catch 45 passes. And he's a better receiving back than Kareem Hunt, which is saying a lot. At least as of right now.
He's probably one of the best receiving backs that come out of college in a long time.
Yeah, so I think that fits what they do well, and I think he's going to benefit from that. But I just don't know how much target share he's gonna demand early in the season. And if he doesn't demand that, like Mike Wright from the Fantasy Footballers, I was listening to him today, and he was saying that he would not be surprised if he saw 60 or 70 catches go Clyde's way. And I'm like, I was doing my projections and I was looking back at the past and I'm like, where do we see the 60 targets, 70 targets coming from? I don't see where it's coming from.
What I'll say is last year, Damian Williams had 37 targets and 30 catches. And then LaShawn McCoy also had 34 targets and 28 catches.
So if you just consolidate them down, it could be...
I think Clyde can be the combination of those two. Like, he can get the same amount of targets as those two players combined. I'm just throwing to the running back position.
Yeah.
I think he's going to get that kind of work. And that would put him at around 58 to 60 receptions. So that's the answer for me.
Yeah.
And even if you're right, though, like, let's say he only gets like 45 catches. He's going to be really efficient with them.
He's still like 8 or 9.
With Andy Reid's play calling ability, we could see a lot of screens that go like 30, 40 yards.
Yeah. So the big issue that I do have though is just the fact that if let's just say he gets a little bit more than Kareem Hunt's, target share when Kareem Hunt was on the Chiefs, right? Or a little more than the Damian Williams target share. And he does reach 40 catches or 45 to 50 catches, and he reaches that total. And he gets maybe 230, 240 rushes on the ground. What does that give you? 280 touches? Even if he does that, right, everything for him is going to come down to, like you said, efficiency, which is not going to be a problem. I think he's going to be a top 7 back. But the big issue that I see is that when you're drafting in fantasy football, you want to draft for upside. Right now, people are saying that Clyde is you just said Clyde's your 6th running back. I just said Clyde's like my 7th or 8th running back.
He's 6 or 7, probably. I have to do the rankings.
If you had to place your entire savings account betting on where you think Clyde would finish, where do you think he's going to finish among running backs in 2020?
It's going to be low end RB1, probably. Like between 6 and 10.
So for me, this is where I'm kind of at, is that if I'm at 8, 9, 10, and I'm taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire off the board as the 7th running back, and he ends up at the 7th running back, I'm drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire at his ceiling, or I'm drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire at his floor, I should say. So the big thing is how much, if he ends up doing what we think he's going to do, and he only ends up as the running back, 6 or 7, then we're drafting him exactly where he's supposed to be. And, we are getting the chance of him being a top 4 running back. But I think the risk is far higher than the first round pick reward that you're getting. I don't know. That's just kind of where I'm at right now. Like if he was an early 2nd round pick, I would be all over it. And maybe I'm just complaining about 5 spots, but like, get your guy. I don't care if you draft him 5 spots early, but
so let's say you're sitting at the 10th pick. You're not taking Clyde.
It depends on who else is on the board.
You taking Joe Mixon over Clyde?
No. But it would be tough for me to look at Nick Chubb and Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is on Oakland, and that's what draws me back from him so much. He had 298 paced out carries last year, and they said they're going to expand his workload. And I'm like, in the passing game. And I'm like, I love Josh Jacobs, but I'm confused on Clyde. I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I would spend a 1st round pick on him in the late 1st round. Like, so I'm not telling people not to. I'm just not a guy that really I liked him in the 2nd round and the 3rd round. I'm kind of nervous about drafting him in the 1st because what if in the off chance Clyde just craps himself?
Right.
And he's just not good. Then you spent a first-round pick on an unknown guy when you could have gotten Nick Chubb, you could have gotten Josh Jacobs, you could have gotten even Miles Sanders. And it's like, I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'll probably draft him. I'll probably draft him on a million of my teams, as redraft season or draft season. The last July episode is today, so draft month is next episode. But like, I just look at Clyde and I see him like the realm of outcomes for him. He's a lock top 12 running back. He'll probably finish 8 to 10, but he has a ceiling of top 3.
Especially in PPR leagues. So like I said, I bring up Mike Wright earlier. Mike Wright was talking about how he could be similar to Christian McCaffrey. And I'm like, if he gets the passing work that this guy's talking about, I'm on board. I just don't know if that passing work's coming year 1. But then again, like Patrick Mahomes never had a running back that can receive like Clyde. Right.
So it's a giant game of guesswork, like fantasy football always is. Predictions. But I'm just trying to decide, do I want Clyde in the later first round?
If I'm sitting at the end of the first round and he's on the board, I'm taking. I at this point I'm fully invested into Clyde, and if he stinks, I'll just accept it.
So if you're at pick 7, right?
Okay.
And 6 straight running backs came off the board. And let's just assume that Derrick Henry goes ahead of Clyde.
Sure.
And you're left on the board with Clyde or Michael Thomas. Who are you taking?
I'd probably take, 10 team or 12 team.
Let's just say 12.
That makes it harder. Because I was going to say if it's 10 team, I would have taken probably Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
I can get like a Nick Chubb or Joe Mixon or
in the second,
Miles Sanders
if it's
in
a
the
10
second
team,
round.
Yeah.
But in 12 team, you might not be able to get that. So I might take Clyde.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
my opinion might change
at the turn, if you're at pick 7, you might be able to get like Kenyon Drake as your first running back.
Sure.
That's a little risky, but I feel like there's equal risk between Clyde and Kenyon Drake, though. Like Clyde, Kenyon Drake, Miles Sanders, love them all. I would love to take all 3 of them.
All very risky, though.
All very risky. Is there a chance that 2 out of 3 of them work out? Yes.
I think, 2 out of 3 of them will work out, and then one of them's
just gonna. And I hate to say it because I love Kenyon Drake a lot, and I think he's gonna do great this year. But I think if there was one guy that doesn't perform the way that we anticipated, probably it'd be Kenyon Drake.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Like I think Clyde and Sanders are probably going to be. Sanders all depends on whether Devonta Freeman signs with the Eagles at some point. But anyway. Right. So those are my thoughts on Clyde. I don't know if I'm crazy or not. I just like to temper excitement because I think
that's true. Yeah.
In like 3 weeks, people are gonna like come away from this and they're gonna look back on the Clyde hype and they're gonna be like, ugh, do I really want to draft him ahead of Nick Chubb and Josh Jacobs?
I don't know how I'm gonna feel about that in like a week.
Yep.
Like my opinions might change.
See, I just got there. I got there a whole day ahead. I mean, a whole week ahead of everyone else.
Yeah. It's
not for some.
I
the
really
Clyde
like
haters.
Clyde. I do, but
like
Chubb and Derrick Henry and Mixon, like he's in that tier for sure. And Miles Sanders.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's hard.
Like I was playing with the projections, bro, and I was just doing some range of outcomes. And one range, I don't think it's possible, but one range had him at 295 fantasy points. And that's just, you can't pass up on that, especially as a late first round pick. Like what I'm finding this year with the late first round is that, and last year even, I think you took James Conner in your first round last year.
I did. 12th overall or 10th overall.
Like he didn't work out for you. He wasn't bad last year when he was on the field, but he just didn't work out. And the hard part with the late round is that you got to find that feature running back. And there's so many different options and so much potential at the back end of the first round. But realistically, only 1 or 2 guys are going to work out. So you have to find the 1 or 2 guys that are going to work out. I just don't want to be stuck with Clyde Edwards-Helaire not working out this year. And I could have taken Miles Sanders and he ends up like Christian McCaffrey. I don't know.
I mean, last year in our home league, I think I took James Conner 10, Julio 11. And then I think the 12th or 13th pick ended up being Damian Williams. So that's 2 running backs right there. Like the back end, the first round, top of the second, that did not work out. So you do kind of have to be careful.
Yeah, but those are our Clyde thoughts. I was gonna have it be I want it to be a separate whole episode on Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
We could just talk about
We could just cut that out and just put it on its own episode. We'll just cut this entire clip and post it Monday. You can listen to it on Monday. No, but let's jump right into value picks. We got some running backs, wide receivers. We're going to start out with the running backs. And we got some interesting players to talk about. First on the board is David Montgomery. He is going off the board right now, according to Fantasy Pros, as the RB27, which is, it seems, I mean, what did he finish last year as?
He was RB20.
24 is what you said? I think we lost Rick. I believe he is the RB24. I lost you for a second. What'd you say?
Oh, I was just going to say you have to give me a minute to find the numbers.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, you just dropped. So at some point, friends, we will be back in a studio together.
Yeah,
at some point. So my thoughts on David Montgomery real fast. Last year he had 242 rushing attempts. And he had about 35 targets, 25 receptions. So he had 267 opportunities last year. He had 267 opportunities with, I think it was for the majority of the first half of the season, his snap percentage was relatively low. I think it was in the 50s. And they were giving opportunities to Mike Davis. They freaking gave who's that guy? The wide receiver, Cordero Patterson. They gave him like a run up the gut in the red zone. And I'm like, what the freak are you guys doing? I think the big thing with David Montgomery is like, obviously the reason why he's a value is because you're getting close to 270 to possibly 300 opportunities, right? In the fourth, fifth round, depending on your format. So like, to me, like if you're like, he's not a sexy pick. He's not going to be like, even if he slightly increases his efficiency to 4 yards a carry, he could finish with 1,000 rushing yards and probably like 200-300 receiving yards and, maybe 10 touchdowns and end up as a mid-range, RB2 to a high-end RB2, which is where like I said, I think he draws a lot of comparisons to Frank Gore. Frank Gore always ended as, or Mark Ingram even, who always ends as a low-end RB1, high-end RB2. I think that's what David Montgomery's career is going to be, is a lot of low-end RB1, high-end RB2 kind of finishes. And I think that starts this year. But when you're talking about getting 300-plus opportunities, like when you're sitting on the board in the fourth, fifth round and there's not a lot of running backs left and you need opportunity, then David Montgomery is like a perfect pick. He just needs slightly more efficiency, and I think Nick Foles is going to bring that to the table.
So, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm not even crazy about Montgomery, but where he's getting drafted, you should take him every day, all day.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think going in the fifth round, you said?
Yeah.
I mean, the 27th running back off the board, like feels a little. I'm not even a Montgomery person, but I think that feels a little much for me.
Like,
and Nick, yeah, go ahead.
Is it like I said? Is the range of outcomes for him like 15 or 16?
Yeah, I mean, I could easily see him being as like the RB15.
That's 10 spots. That's like a whole round and a half.
Right. Just because of his work. Like and with Nick Foles there, potentially getting the offense. Like if Nick Foles starts, obviously, and even if Trubisky starts, it means he earned it.
Right.
But if Nick Foles is the starter and the offense is even just slightly better,
right,
and he gets about 250 carries, 255 carries, like he was on pace for, I think from. If you take out week 1, which was his first game of his career, and they wanted to give Mike Davis work,
right.
I think he was on pace for. I don't have the numbers in front of me if you want to pull it up, but I think it was around like 200. He would have been on pace for like 255, 260 carries.
Oh, who?
If he does that,
is this Monty you're talking about?
Yeah, just take out week 1.
Yeah, got you. I did the pacing like last week for this. There was also a week where he had like 2 carries against against New Orleans.
That was the game they were losing the whole game. But you can even if you include that, I think.
So the pacing for him was 252 rushing attempts, 26 catches, that's about 280. He had 929 yards on the ground and 169 yards through the air. So his efficiency went down without that game, but he had more opportunities.
So if he gets 280 touches And his touchdowns might go up too if Nick Foles is there and more efficient. He gets like 8-9 rushing touchdowns. He's going to be like an RB like 18, 17. Like he's going to be in that range.
Yeah.
And
especially
you're
with
getting a solid RB2.
Yeah.
And with incredible value for where he's going.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like I said, there's not many and this is why I as much as gross as it is, I kind of like Sony Michel too. What is it? 6th or 7th round for him is he's probably going to get 200 to 250, maybe somewhere around 250 touches. And I'm like, he's going to do that. I mean, why not throw him on your bench? He's a gross
player, but he could finish as like a low end RB2.
I think with Cam Newton there and being more efficient in terms of what they do, like Lamar opens up so much for the Ravens in terms of their running backs, just because they're worried more about him doing an RPO on a handoff instead of worrying about the running back. So it opens up lanes, and I think the New England Patriots are going to take advantage of that. But I mean, I'm not saying, and this has nothing to do with Chicago opening up lanes because they have Nick Foles at quarterback. But the point is, you have to draft opportunity when it's there in the middle rounds. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so David Montgomery being there, 3rd, 4th, in some leagues it's 3rd round, but 4th and 5th round, like that's worth it to me, especially if he ends up being, your flex or your RB2. It's a good value. Let's talk about the number 2 running back that we have on our value picks list is Kareem Hunt. This is an interesting one. RB29.
Yes. We've been high on Kareem Hunt on this show. And I think there's a valid reason for that. If you just look at what he did last year when he came in for Cleveland, he was pretty solid.
Yeah.
His ability in the passing game too.
Crazy.
What'd you say? You cut out for me.
I said, it was crazy.
Oh yeah. He
paced out at 88 targets, 74 receptions.
Yeah. I mean, he was really, really solid. And he's people are going to be down on him, especially in just most like redraft leagues, just because they know Nick Chubb is there. But he still played well, even with Nick Chubb there. Like he was like last year, he was still a week to week flex.
Yeah.
Even as a second running back, and he's also like you don't want to draft a handcuff this early, but at the same time, he is the best handcuff in fantasy football because if Nick Chubb goes down,
oh my God, he's like a top 5 running back.
Yeah, he might even be better than Nick Chubb at that point.
Yeah. I don't even know.
Just because of his passing game.
I'm kind of like feeling like he's just going to take over. I love Nick Chubb, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb's a better runner than Kareem Hunt, like in terms of rushing, but I just think all around Kareem Hunt's just the better running back. Mm-hmm. I would think. But anyway, he's only in his 3rd season. It's freaking ridiculous. Or 4th season, I should say. It's ridiculous. So I wanted to look at some numbers with this man because you know me and my numbers. I was trying to figure out, is there a realm or a possibility where Kareem Hunt could finish top 12 and Nick Chubb finish top 12? Is that a thing? Is that possible? It happened for New Orleans. We know that. Yep. I think Mark Ingram was the RB6 and Alvin Kamara was the RB4 that season.
They were both
2017, 2018. So I looked at the numbers for that just to see if it was possible. And, how Kareem Hunt, how Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram coexisted. Mark Ingram had like 240 opportunities in that offense. Alvin Kamara had 200. He had 120 carries that season, 120 carries and 80 receptions. So it got him to like 200 and I think it was 203 or 204 opportunities on the season. Uh-huh. And he was so freaking efficient that he just tore his way to RB4 in all of fantasy. It's incredible what he was able to do.
He was RB3 too.
It's crazy. So I look at Kareem Hunt and I go, okay, you look at his paced out numbers. He might be able to hit 90 targets. He might be able to get up to 75 to 80 receptions, similar to where Alvin Kamara was that season. So I was asking the question, like when I paced out his numbers last year, right? He only hit 86 rushes. But then we have to account for Stefanski coming in. Do you want to know how many rushes Alexander Mattison had last year on the Minnesota Vikings?
How many?
123 paced out to a full season.
Mm.
So Kareem Hunt could get 120 rushes and 90 targets for like maybe 75 to 80 receptions. You know, with the offensive line being a lot better and there being improvements in the Browns' whole offense, his yards per reception was not very good last year. With Kansas City, Kareem Hunt was around 14 yards per reception last year with
the offense. That
was just the offense. But next year, I think you could get around 10 yards per reception. And if he does that, he's around 700 receiving yards. And I think he'll probably get 3 or 4 receiving touchdowns at that. And then I think he'll probably get 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns. And the big question is how efficient he is on the ground. If he gets somewhere between 4.5 to 4.7 yards on the ground per carry, he's going to be right around like 500 or 600. So you're talking about maybe him getting 11 or 1,200 all-purpose yards. You put that together with his total fantasy points and half PPR from targets. Let's just say he gets 80. That's 40. So now he's at 150, 160 fantasy points. And then he scores 8 touchdowns or somewhere in that ballpark. And he's right around, 190 to 200 fantasy points next year, which makes him an RB14 or an RB15. So I think that's the low end for him. I think he could score more than that if he is a little bit more efficient. Like if he gets 12 yards per reception and 5 yards per attempt on the ground, you could see him get a lot more efficient. But as long as he get I always talk about my fantasy point per opportunity. If he gets 200 opportunities, Kareem Hunt is always at 1 fantasy point per opportunity. He's going to get, if he gets 200 opportunities in this offense, he's going to be a top 15 running back this year. And that sounds, I don't know, maybe that I should have put that on the bold prediction show, but that's just what I see with Kareem Hunt. And if there have been some rumors floating around that they might go a little bit more even with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb next year.
Oh man, if they do that.
I haven't heard that from any legitimate people, but if that does happen and Kareem Hunt gets 150 rushes, he's going to be more in the ballpark range of being a top 12 running back. But I think there's definitely a world where Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both finish as top 12 running backs. And the point is for this whole discussion is that Kareem Hunt is the RB29 right now, and I think for sure he's going to finish higher than that.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in PPR leagues and half PPR leagues where he's going to get those receptions. You've convinced me on the fact that this very well seems like a Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara. And he doesn't even have to be, he's not going to be Alvin Kamara, where he's going to get 300 fantasy points, but he can be he can get 200 fantasy points and end up being the RB14, 15, RB13. And if you're getting that in the 7th round.
Even only if he gets 190 and ends up as the RB17, that's a great flex.
Oh yeah, that is a fantastic flex. So Kareem Hunt is definitely solid value there.
Yeah, I mean, I had to look at some of the numbers, and I feel like I'm just pulling numbers from different places just to make Kareem Hunt a thing. But he's one of those picks that as I do my mock drafts, I always whether I'm at pick 3 or I'm pick 5 or pick 9, I always end up just seeing Kareem Hunt on the board and just passing on him. And I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, why am I passing on Kareem Hunt? So I just started doing research, and I'm like, why are more people not talking about Kareem Hunt?
Right.
So, but I think the value is definitely there. At minimum, he finishes 12 spots ahead of where he's getting drafted right now. And to get him in the 6th, 7th round, and I think there's also he has RB2 / flex capabilities, right? Mm-hmm. But what's baked into Kareem Hunt's value is that if Nick Chubb gets slapped on the COVID list or Nick Chubb gets hurt.
That's very true.
That is Kareem Hunt coming out.
The COVID thing is going to be.
And if you draft Nick Chubb, you need Kareem Hunt. But not just that. Even if you don't draft Nick Chubb, I think you need Kareem Hunt. Get that depth, get that value. You're not expecting him to start week 1. And if he ends up being a lot better than what was anticipated from the start of the season to the end of the season, you got a great running back there. You know what I mean? A mid-range RB2, maybe high-end RB2 that can get you production.
For sure, yeah. No, if you draft Nick Chubb, if I draft Nick Chubb in a redraft, I am very much trying to get Kareem Hunt on my team.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking this year more than any year, you really have to get your handcuffs. And usually I wouldn't say draft handcuffs, but if you have an opportunity to draft a handcuff for your starting running back, you got to do it. Unless it's Zeke. Zeke already had COVID, so he's locked in for at least 4 months.
True.
Antibodies, man. He's already built immunity. It was all the Chick-fil-A.
Definitely the Chick-fil-A.
Number 3, final running back, Ronald Jones. You actually brought this up to me before we started the show, and I'm like, why not? Keyshawn Vaughn was put on the COVID list, rookie running back. I think it was a second-round pick for the Bucs. Mm-hmm. And that has been kind of the drawback on the Ronald Jones situation, which is why he's going as the 34th running back off the board. It's just, Keyshawn Vaughn is going to come in and take opportunities from him, and that's why he's not kind of being drafted as that feature running back for the Bucs. Sure. Keyshawn Vaughn was just placed on the COVID list, so he's going to be out for at least 3 weeks, which is 3 freaking valuable weeks to earn the job in Tampa, to earn Brady's respect. You know what I mean? Like, to get opportunities from Tom Brady. So I'm like, there's going to be 2 weeks before the season starts. He's going to have to come in. Like, I would assume he's learning the playbook, studying and doing all that stuff while he's not on the field. But man, that time to mesh with your teammates
for a rookie trying to compete for a starting job, it's important. I love Ronald Jones, especially where he's going. Like the RB 30. Last year he finished as the RB 26, right?
Yeah. God, so gross.
And Peyton Barber had 154 carries.
Yeah.
Ronald Jones had 172. Do you think Keyshawn Vaughn is going to get more carries than Ronald Jones?
No.
Because I don't.
No, I think Ronald Jones,
with the COVID thing.
If anything, how many did you say Peyton Barber had? 150?
154.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if Ronald Jones ends up with 200 rushes and Keyshawn Vaughn ends up with 120. That would not be surprising. So that alone,
Ronald Jones gets 200 rushes, he should be higher than the RB 34.
Yeah, because he had 40 targets for 30 receptions last year. They weren't good receptions. Actually, they were. No. He was a lot better through the air than people make him out to be. 10 yards per reception.
And that's going to be good with Tom Brady too. You know how Brady is. Like, he'll read defenses and then he'll audible to a run play. He does that all the time, especially on the goal line.
Right.
He likes doing that at the 1 or 2 yard line. I could easily see Ronald, and he's one of those players that could easily stink too. Like, he's a high risk, high reward type player.
Right.
But you're getting him in the RB 34. Like, that risk
ridiculous.
Is so worth it for Ronald Jones. And they also had Winston carry. Winston had 60 rushes last year. Brady's not going to rush the ball for 60
Oh,
times.
yeah, that's true.
That opens up 60 carries.
Wow.
So,
yeah, I think you got to buy in on the Ronald Jones, my friends. What is he, a 7th round pick right now? I think I've been getting 7th round in mocks
7th
like
or
that.
8th, yeah.
The only concern that I think that anybody really should have, I was actually surprised looking at the numbers that Ronald Jones is a little bit more efficient on the ground than I thought he was going to be. His true yards per carry rate was about 3.9. His actual yards per carry rate was 4.2. So he was, not as good as you would want him to be on the ground. But I think obviously that changes, better offense, more things going on.
Sure.
Gronk is one of the best blocking tight ends in the history of football.
Gronk is going to make a difference. I'm not even crazy about Gronk fantasy-wise this year just because his receiving is lower, but he was still, last year with New England, was best blocker in the league at tight end. So
he's insanely good. So I think for me, like last year is at 4.2 yards per carry. I think that could go up to 4.5, and I think with 200, is that unreasonable? I feel like people are going to be like, that's unreasonable.
Man, if he does that.
Yeah, 4.5 yards a carry at 200 rushing. Oh, my God, my calculator just went dits on me.
That's a lot, though.
200 rushing attempts at 4.5 yards a carry is 900 rushing yards. So he would have 900 rushing yards, and I would say about 300 receiving yards, which puts him right around 11 to 1,200 all-purpose. And
how many touchdowns, too?
Last year he had 6. Didn't score any receiving.
Peyton Barber also had 6.
So I could see...
They had 14 rushing touchdowns as a team 15, sorry.
Maybe 8 to 10.
Yeah, I could easily see 8 to 10.
So I could see him in the range of 180 to 200 fantasy points total. I don't think by any means he's going to have, a breakout season and end up. I mean, who knows? Maybe he does, but I don't think he's going to have a breakout season. I just think that
Keyshawn Vaughn just doesn't play.
He's probably going to finish as the RB 16 to RB 18, and right now he's going off the board as the RB 34. So this is another one of those Kareem Hunt like plays where you could get him. You could draft J.K. Dobbins at this spot and cross your fingers and hope for the best. Hope he breaks out, or you could draft Ronald Jones and get legitimate production.
Right.
So yeah, hope Ingram opts out. No, I'm literally rooting for all the old running backs that are sitting in front of the rookies
this year just because of.
No, I would take the risk on him. I just mean like if there's Kareem Hunt or Ronald Jones on the board.
I'd probably rather have Ronald Jones. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are just some of the things on Ronald Jones if we haven't sold you on drafting him anyway. And I think there is a ceiling. You know what I mean? Like, what's the highest possible finish? What's the last possible outcome for Ronald Jones in 2020?
The best possible outcome?
Yeah.
Probably like the RB 13.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I would say maybe RB 10.
Yeah, wow. That would
but that's crazy. About a half percentage chance.
Though, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know that's going to happen. That would need Keyshawn Vaughn out for like a lot of the season, or they just decide that they don't want to utilize him at all this year just because of the lack of preparation and other such stuff. So let's move on to some wide receivers. Robert Woods, another guy that I don't know that we've spent a lot of times on Mr. Woods.
We haven't talked a ton about Robert Woods.
I think that there's good things coming his way in terms of, obviously we have Brandon Cooks gone. Robert Woods, I mean, even with Brandon Cooks on the field, Robert Woods last year was still I think he was the wide receiver 17. So I think, and that was through 15 games. So I think for Robert Woods, and last year, I think, we only had 3 total touchdowns on the year. He had 90 receptions on 140 targets, 1,134 yards. And the biggest problem for him, he's basically the wide receiver version of Leonard Fournette. He just couldn't score a touchdown to save his life. So, yep. I mean, I would think that the 140 targets themselves are enough for you to be like, yes, please. Like if you're just number 8 in the league in target share. I mean, not in target share, in the amount of targets he had. So if he gets 90 catches again with 1,100, 1,200 receiving yards, and he actually scores 6 or 7 touchdowns this year, he could definitely finish way higher than that wide receiver 17. I'm thinking like wide receiver 10 or 9.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I'm not projecting that or not like predicting that, but I do think that and you're also sitting there thinking like Brandon Cooks, what do you have, 90 targets last year? So those targets got to go somewhere. I mean, I guess everyone's assuming it's going to be Tyler Higbee that gets them, but I think
that'll be.
Do you think that Robert Woods could reach 150 targets?
Oh yeah, it's possible. I mean, a lot of people have talked about. I don't think we have,
because that's just through 15 games too.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of people have talked about Robert Woods' ability in the second half of the season, and how many targets he got. Because if you remember last year, he was kind of disappointing for most of the season.
Yeah.
And then the last 5 or 6 weeks, he was consistently getting 10+ targets a week.
Yeah.
And it seemed like Jared Goff had kind of switched to being Robert Woods being the go-to guy.
Yeah.
I think Woods and a lot of people like Woods more. A lot of people like Cooper Kupp more. I love both guys for this year. I think they can both be top 15
I don't know why
receivers.
I don't know why there's always got to be one guy in an offense. Like, can't you just be okay with 2?
Yeah. Well, especially because they're both those guys are going to get a ridiculous amount of targets. Because last year we were arguing the fact that only 2 of the 3 guys are going to do good because we had Cooks, Woods, and Kupp, and all 3 of them can't do good.
Yeah.
But 2 of them can do good. Like we've seen that in multiple offenses. And I mean, the amount of times that the Rams throw the ball, with Cooks gone, like who's the third guy? I mean, Tyler Higbee maybe.
Josh Reynolds
get some targets. Van Jefferson.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get. I think he'll get 20 targets on the season. Josh Reynolds is going to be the guy, but I don't.
Josh Reynolds, yeah.
I think
he'll get more than 20 targets, but he's not going to get more than 60. He'll get
Oh yeah, I agree. I think there's enough there. Through 15 games, Robert Woods had 140 targets. I think that with that extra game, he might have reached, 149, 150. So, I mean, there is a realm of opportunity where Robert Woods ends up with 150 to 160 targets in this offense just because of how they run it. Nothing's changed. But just the amount of target share that he gets and the lack of respect to Robert Woods always, I can't believe that people are letting him fall this low. Now, I wanted to give you the games you were talking about. It was weeks 10 through 17.
Yeah.
He played 7 games. He had paced out to a full 16 games, 181 targets.
Oh, my goodness.
119
He's
receptions. He's
not going to do that again, but...
119 receptions, 1,515 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He also had 11 rushing attempts over that time.
If Robert Woods just got touchdowns last year, he would have been a top 10 fantasy receiver.
I just wanted to punch some of these numbers into a calculator and just see how many fantasy points he would have come away with. I have him at, without the 11 rushes, paced out 11 rushes for 101 yards. He has 245 fantasy points. With that, he's at 255, which is a top 3 finish.
I think, yeah. Last year, that would have been the wide receiver 2.
Yeah. So, I mean, the value that you're getting from Robert Woods, yes, he's a little bit on the back 9, I guess. Is that what you would say?
I think he's only 27, 28. So he's not he's a year younger than Thielen. So he's not super old.
Do you think that people are buying the wrong wide receiver in Los Angeles? I just said you can buy both. I don't really care. But Cooper Kupp right now is the wide receiver on Sleeper. He's going as ADP 35, and Robert Woods is ADP 46.
I like both guys a lot. I think I would, if I had to pick one. Mm-hmm. I mean, so what I would say is, if I had to pick one, I'd take Kupp. But what their ADPs are, I would take Woods. Yeah.
If you had to take one guy, if you wanted to get. So I mean, now that remains to be seen. We're not saying that Robert Woods is going to get 160 targets. We're not saying that.
But
we're just giving you the realm of outcomes.
150.
Yeah, and if he does get 150 targets, knowing what his catch rate is, knowing, a lot of the stuff that we know about Robert Woods, there is a realm of outcomes where he finishes. I think he finishes with the same amount of catches, the same amount of receiving yards, with a little bit more, efficiency in terms of scoring touchdowns, a positive touchdown regression. And he ends up, generally speaking, as the wide receiver 13, wide receiver 12, and to get a guy like that at wide receiver 26 off the board, according to Fantasy Pros, that, I'll do that all day. That's like stealing. It's taking candy from a baby in the middle rounds. Literally, take Robert Woods, my friends.
It is.
So, let's talk about the next wide receiver and finish off the show with Tyler Boyd. We've talked about him a little bit in the last month, a bunch of times. Maybe even in the last 2 weeks, I would say.
Yeah, a couple bunch of times
we've talked about him. Last year, he was another one of these random guys that you wouldn't think, hey, he scored, you know what I mean? He got 147 targets, right? Robert Woods, we just talked about 140 targets. I want target share. Last year, this is my mistake. I figured it out. Last year, I drafted a bunch of wide receivers in the first 6 rounds who don't get targets. Now, it worked out with Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin had 120 targets, but he was a wide receiver too. The other 2 guys I drafted were freaking Odell and Stefan Diggs. One ended up with 90 targets, and the other ended up with 120. So I'm I'm drafting for target share at this point. If the guys turn out to be poop, then whatever. But he had 90 catches. Tyler Boyd had 90 catches, 1,045 receiving yards, and then he ended with a total of 5 touchdowns. I believe he was the wide receiver 23. Yeah. So for him, I think it's becoming a little bit more efficient, which I think he can do with AJ Green returning. He's going to be more efficient there, and with Joe Burrow throwing him the football, I think he might score more than 5 touchdowns. I don't know that he's going to continue to demand the 147 targets, but what we really need to see a change in is his catch rate and his yards per reception, because if he gets a little bit higher in the yards per reception area, which he should, yeah.
With Burrow there.
But, his true catch rate was 79%. His actual catch rate was right around, I want to say, I can't find it. I want to say 61%. So when he was getting targeted efficiently, like good targets, he was catching them. So I think that Joe Burrow can change that, make him get him more target, quality targets. So if he does that, I think, he could definitely, he might end up with only 130 targets next year, maybe even 120 targets, but I think he'll be more efficient to end in the same area with 90 receptions. But I think the big thing for me is just going to be how many total touchdowns he scores. And if he scores enough, he can finish definitely a lot higher than the wide receiver 33.
Yeah, no, for sure. We've talked about Boyd before, how he's more efficient with AJ Green. He should be more efficient with Joe Burrow. The offense is better, so that should also make him more efficient. So his target share will probably go down a little bit, just because with T. Higgins, who I don't think is going to get a lot of targets, but just another mouth to feed, and AJ Green getting some targets. So he might not get the 147. Is that what he got last year?
Yeah, 147.
Yeah, he might not get 147, but he'll be more efficient with the targets that he does get. So if he gets like 130, 135 targets, still a lot of targets, and more efficient. Last year he had, what, you said 5 touchdowns?
Yep.
That number should probably go up to maybe like, we'll see, like 6, 7, 8.
I mean, I would not be surprised if he ends up with 5 again, but
yeah, I think he's not a type of guy that I see getting double-digit touchdown numbers, but I think he can get like a few, like I'd say around 7 is probably where I'd project him at.
Yeah.
With just that little boost. And so he's going to make up for the target share with him being more efficient. Right. He was the wide receiver 23 last year. So I think he's probably going to end up being around there again this year, in between like the wide receiver 20, 24 range.
Right.
And you're getting that as a wide receiver 33 off the board. That's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. There you have it with all of the value picks for 2020.
There's plenty of them.
They're like, it literally makes me I didn't even know Robert Woods had 140 targets before we started talking about it. So now I'm excited. But there's just so many guys, you know what I mean? Like, you can literally get so much depth for your team in the middle rounds.
Right. At multiple positions.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. There's even like guys that you wanted to put on this list that we didn't end up doing it.
Yeah.
A guy like Marlon Mack, who people are completely down on, but he's still
running back 36.
Yeah, with the amount of times the Colts run the ball, even if Jonathan Taylor is like what people hope he's going to be, as a rookie, like Marlon Mack will still get like 180 carries, which should be better than the RB 36. So there's plenty of value players going off this year. So
agreed.
You just gotta be smart with it.
Agreed. That'll do it for value picks. The full CEH will be in this episode. Don't worry. If you got this far, you already listened. Check out our website, The Fantasy Champions. Buy the draft guide. Talk to you on Tuesday.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.